Thank you. It's always a pleasure to present to this group. And as Bill said, my program tonight is 4 decades of railfanning the Golden State. I call it California dreaming because I've had such numerous trips out there over almost 40 years. So much I can't really cover it all, so I'm not going to try to. I'm going to focus on Tehachapi, Cajon, and the Mojave, and see the changes in the operations and the motive power that have evolved over time, which I think makes the talk more interesting. So we'll start with Tehachapi, which of course was a Southern Pacific line that began operations in 1876, but the Santa Fe threatened to build their own line, and SP believed them. It would have cost an arm and a leg and plus some, but they arranged a trackage agreement in 1899. One of the interesting things about the line is, though it sort of runs north and south, Southern Pacific always had a timetable direction of west or east. Anything on this Southern Pacific system that went towards San Francisco was west, no matter which direction it was traveling. The UP came in and they changed it to north and south. But I'm going to stick with east and west for the purposes of this talk. So we're going to tour geographically from one end of the line to the other. Imagine we got a four-wheel drive DeLorean. We'll drive to where we want to go. When we want to change time, we'll hop in the car and turn on the turbo encabulator and be on our way. So we'll start here in 1986. This was my first long distance trip, railfanning in Bakersfield. And this is at Kern Junction. The Santa Fe and the SP both had lines through the San Joaquin Valley that came down from the Bay Area, and the Santa Fe merged into the SP line here at Bakersville to head over Tehachapi Pass. So here we are a little south on Edison Highway in Edison, California, and this is in 1991. You'll notice I got the dates on all of these, so I don't have to necessarily let you know what time span we're in here. And this was after about a year of the war bonnets being introduced. So you got an AAAA set of GP60Ms. This is the hot shot from the San Francisco Bay Area to Chicago. Here we are in Sandcut. And in this area here, the railroad and the highway sort of dropped down a little bit to follow Caliente Creek. This was a spot where the SP used to add their helpers. The Santa Fe, I believe, put theirs on at their own terminal in Bakersfield. So we go a little further, and the railroad follows the Caliente Creek into a canyon, so we lose access. We go the long way around, we can end up on the road that leads into the town of Caliente, and here we are looking down on the railroad. This is one of the oil trains that used to run regularly from Kern County, which is in the San Joaquin Valley, down to a refining operation, I think in Long Beach, but don't quote me on that. And it was a regular train that ran on the SP and usually had a lot of power, 4 to 6 units on the front, 4 or 5 or more mid-train. We're going to see another one of these trains a little bit later. If we go down into Caliente, kind of backtrack on the railroad access road, which of course is well before 9/11 when you could do that. Here's a westbound Santa Fe train. This is kind of a typical Santa Fe consist from that era. 2 manufacturers, 3 or 4 different locomotive models, maybe a couple of paint schemes. We've got a B36-7 on the point. one of Santa Fe's 3 B39-8's second, a Kodachrome SD45-2, and the fourth unit, I think, is a C30-7.
Jim, is that the Coast Range amount? Oh, no, that's the usual color I'm used to see in California, that brown, but that green was unusual.
Well, we're talking, if you look at the, it's in February, January, February, March, maybe into April, the Tehachapis were green.
Okay.
All right, here we are in July, and how you're probably used to seeing it, brown as can be. So here's the town of Caliente. This is that train we saw earlier at Edison. Behind me is a almost 180-degree horseshoe, and the railroad will then head up into this area. You can see, even here, you can see the grade. And then it really gets to be tough going from Caliente up to Cable. Is all single track with passing sidings, or it was. They're starting to double track some of it over the last few years. So here's a great crossing. It was behind me when I photographed the other train. This is a westbound Santa Fe, probably heading for the packing plants in the San Joaquin Valley. So you see all these Pacific Fruit Express cars there. I think this whole consist was all GP35s. From that location, if you look up the hill, you see it's green, it's February. Now we're in a more current era. This is a westbound BNSF train heading downgrade from tunnels 1 and 2, which are out of sight behind the train. There's a nice access road. We're going to use that to get up here and take a look at the scenery from there. So here's from that spot as I showed you. You see the same tree in the picture here on the left. This is a train heading upgrade eastbound in 1991 with I think this is a GP60 on the point. Sun's just coming over the mountains. That bridge there is the first crossing of Caliente Creek. And there's also a road that goes there that heads to Bealville, which we'll see a little bit later.
Do you know what the grade would have been without the Tehachapi Loop, Jim?
No, I don't, but obviously it would be pretty severe for them to put the loop in.
Okay.
Yeah. Somewhere in my references, I don't have it with me. I had the elevation map, but it would be unmanageable, I'm sure. Okay, so we turn around from this location, and now we've got a couple of trains coming down the hill. This is Southern Pacific trailer train here. And not far behind it was a Santa Fe 899 train, which was a regular run on here from Southern California to the Bay Area with 2 GP60Ms on the point. From that spot, if you turn to the right and look down into the valley, this is what you see. This is where we saw that Santa Fe train with all the green lush foliage in the background a little earlier. Trailer train coming into Caliente. And you can see there are multiple tracks here. They could hold trains here if they needed to. And I've even seen them make pickups and drop-offs here with traffic. All right, if we backtrack on the road, we went into Caliente and we come to tunnel number 2, which sits over the tracks and is a good vantage point, and probably one of the few places is still accessible these days. This is an SP train that's heading east uphill.
What's that second engine?
That is an Oakway. SD60, straight SD60. I think that's probably what it is. Although, now that I look closer, the number doesn't match. So it's an EMD leaser, but it's not an SD60. The number, I think, is 6307. Yeah, I'm not sure what the model number that is. Here we are in March in 2001, so it's still green. And this was one of my favorite eras to photograph the UP because it had some interesting motor power. This is an SD40 390 Mac with a lot of Pacific Northwest lumber. If we turn the other way from that vantage point, we can see a westbound train coming out of the combined Bealville-Allard siding, and you can see the twists and turns even here. We're nowhere near the loop, what the railroad had to go through to climb this grade.
Any guess how fast the trains run?
My guess is they were probably doing 25, 35, not very fast. Not very fast. There's no significant tangent track from Caliente up to Tehachapi. So here I am down on the ground with a Santa Fe SD40 leading a westbound, coming out of that siding. Photo a little more recent. Well, I say recent, this is what, 24 years ago? My, how time flies. Yes, so this is, we got a BNSF leader, an NS, a Santa Fe painted unit. I'm not sure what these other two are behind it, but it's coming out of the Allard siding. It's 13,270 feet long, so pretty long siding. Most of the sidings on Tehachapi were 9,000 feet long, except for maybe Marcel. So we go back down to Caliente, take a right, go under that bridge, and we end up at the siding at Bealville. This is in February of '88. Here's a Santa Fe train coming down the hill westbound with an SP oil train sitting in the siding. That's my friend Rod Rambo with his beta camera and our rental car there. From the other side of that crossing, looking into the face of this eastbound in July '91. All right, here's another train coming out of the siding with the UP, actually two UP SD9043 Max. And again, a lot of lumber out of the Pacific Northwest. On the other side of that grade crossing, this is a Santa Fe train coming down from tunnel number 5. And you can see on the far right here, the remains of the collapsed tunnel number 5. There was a 7.2 magnitude earthquake in 1952 that destroyed that tunnel. And they just ripped it out, daylighted it.
So this loop might be near the San Andreas Fault, huh?
I think it's a ways, and it's not the San Andreas Fault here. No, I don't believe so. That's up near San Francisco, out in the ocean, I think, in Blue Cut down in LA. So here we are. The crossing is in the background there. If you look up here, you can see that's the portal of tunnel number 5. That's the east portal. Here we've taken a little farm road up towards the horseshoe with a set of 4 B40-8s. You notice this access road here. So we're going to go back to the crossing and drive up that access road into the Allard Horseshoe. So as we get up into the Horseshoe a bit, staying up on the hill overlooking the tracks, you can see this circuitous route, Tunnel 2, and where we were standing was back in here. This is a train led by SDF 40-2 that Santa Fe got from Amtrak. Remember, they had some derailments and they blamed the motive power. Santa Fe had no trouble running those units. Nonetheless, they made a deal. Santa Fe gave Amtrak a bunch of CF7s and some switchers and got 18 of these SDP 40Fs that they eventually remanufactured into SDF 40-2s, if my research is correct. Don's nodding his head, so okay. Here's another shot from the same general area, showing the train, or at least part of the train, winding its way around the Horseshoe.
Now, how fast was that train going at that point?
Not very fast, you know.
Now, was that
Uphill, all that curvature, 25, 30 miles an hour tops, I would say. I don't know, you guys have been out there. I don't think, yeah, they weren't going very fast. So here's a closer look at one of those SDF 40-2s. Well, yeah. So notice the paint scheme on here. Santa Fe notched the noses. They put in steps here. They reworked the pilot, did some other cosmetic things, changed the headlight position. The reason they did that is the Santa Fe crews didn't like climbing ladders on the outside, and they wanted to enter through the door. So most of you probably know I modeled a Santa Fe, and I just thought this was interesting, and I had to build one. So I found one of the original configured units like Amtrak had, and I went ahead and kind of butchered it, cutting the noses with the notches and adding the other changes that Santa Fe did, and messed up the paint scheme to try to resemble that unit that you saw in the previous picture.
So I guess Santa Fe had to overcome a much tougher grade than the Pennsy did with Horseshoe Curve near Altoona, right?
Well, this is certainly much more tortuous than I think you're going to see on Horseshoe. But I don't know what the altitude differences are. So here's another view of one of those oil trains. This is at the apex of the Allard Horseshoe, and you see the guy about 4 units back who's checking something with the prime mover. This has 6 units on the front, 4 units, and this got 5 on the rear. And you really can't see it in this photo. I have some others that do show it, but this was the tank train. 10 of the cars were connected by piping, and so they would only have to access 1 car to load 10. And they would also use that process for unloading. And I think they used pressurized nitrogen gas to help move the oil into the cars. So now we're at a place called Rowan. It's a little further up the hill. They had an 8,960-foot siding here. This is obviously an intermodal train. Again, a lot of curvature. Here we are at Woodford. Now from Woodford up to the loop, you've had a good chase road, so there was easy access, and you can see, the road is up on the hill, and we walked across the tracks and around wherever we wanted to, and back in the early 90s, no problem. Now, if we turn 180 degrees, look the other way, here's an eastbound. Notice the the fourth unit is one of the FP45s in the war bonnet paint. I saw a lot of those. Unfortunately, never got one on the point. All right, we're getting closer to the loop. We're about a mile below it. That's horizontally, not vertically. This is the fifth crossing of the Caliente Creek with 6 GP35s. You notice again the Pacific Fruit Express refrigerator cars probably hauling fresh fruit from the San Joaquin Valley. Here's a Southern Pacific train in the same location with the typical power you saw back then, tunnel motors and SD45s. So here we are at the loop. The siding there is called Way Long. This is tunnel number 9. This is a westbound going downhill with an SD45 on the point. It's been recently painted in the Kodachrome scheme. Now we are the other side of that tunnel. I'm up on the hills overlooking the loop. And here's an eastbound coming out of the tunnel and entering the siding at Way Long. And here you can see it passing over the train.
When you talked about double tracking, would they double track that tunnel, or they're not going to?
No, it has not been double tracked. It has not been double tracked. I'll show you one. Well, just hold on. We'll get to a point that sort of addresses your question. So here we are at one of my favorite spots at the loop. You could drive into the Loop Ranch, which is right here in the center. And there was this hill with some shade on it. And you could sit and hang out all day if you wanted to and watch the trains come to you. So this is in July 91. SP train with an SD45R on the point coming down the hill with looks like primarily grain cars. This is a helper set passing the same location. Over here, you'll notice a little camper van. It's not unusual to go up here and find somebody just hanging out for a day, 2 days or more. Nobody bothered them. They could sit and watch trains. And of course, Bill has a story about a guy he met there who didn't take a single picture because he said he'd seen it all so many times. He was just there to watch them.
How many trains a day went through there? Each way?
25, 30?
50 or 60.
50 or 60. I mean, depends what we're talking about. A lot less traffic nowadays and the season. I never counted. Of course, you're moving around, you're not going to see them all. All right, so here's looking the other way from my perch on the hill. So Santa Fe train again, you see those Pacific Fruit Express refrigerated cars. Here's what at the time was SP's most recent power acquisition, GP60s, leading the trailer train. And this is what you would see now. This was March 2001 with the pumpkins ruling. Here we are on the other side, past where that camper van was, with an SF-30C, the trailer train, heading east. In the same location, there's an SP train with bare tables. This was the last time I visited the loop in February 2010. We got up real early in the morning in Barstow, drove all the way out here, got to the loop and found a couple of tank cars on their side with scorch marks, track torn up. There'd been a derailment and a fire, and everything was closed down. And Here we have a pair of SD-70 Aces with a work train. Now I'm on the portal of tunnel number 10. You can see number 9 right down here with the Santa Fe train about to duck into tunnel 10. You can see an access road to the right there. I'm not sure when UP decided to double track this area, and instead of daylighting this tunnel or putting in another tunnel, they just skirted the outcropping that I'm standing on to the right, and just went around the tunnel and connected way long siding with Marcel to have, I'm not sure how many miles of double track.
With so many curves, I guess there'd be a whole lot of rail wear from the flanges, wouldn't there?
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. Yeah. So here we are at Marcel. This is right off the Woodford Tehachapi Road. That's tunnel number 10 that I was standing on top of in the background. And the route for the second track is coming off from the right where the access road is now. Little further east, back in 88, Marcel actually had a siding on either side of the main, so it was 3 tracks. This is a short eastbound, I don't know if that's a Santa Fe or a Southern Pacific unit on the point there. And then you can see the oil train, the tank train, winding around, disappearing, and coming across the top of the frame. This is tunnel number 17. This is taken from the highway California 58. Easy access, you just pull off the road. And this is cable. We're approaching Tehachapi. This is where they go back into double track and continue through the town of Tehachapi. Here we have Santa Fe and an SP meet.
Is Tehachapi town pretty small? I guess it probably is, huh?
It's a reasonable sized town. I don't know what the population is. They had a railroad station, a couple of motels, some shopping. Yeah, it was about, I don't know, 8-10 blocks long.
Okay.
But I don't know what it looks like today. So this is in February 2002. We had some snow on the mountains. Tehachapi is 3,771 feet in elevation. I'm not sure where they start out in Bakersfield. So this was on one of my trips just after the war bonnets arrived. I recall this train vividly because back then, in July, the days are very long. So if you want to be up at sunrise and shooting at sundown when you got the best light, and it's hot, you get pretty worn out. So we had the strategy of being out early, resting in the middle of the day, and then going out again late. And I'm in the motel, looking at the tracks, relaxing. Fortunately, I was dressed when I saw this set of 8 GP60s, the first 6 in war bonnet paint, go by the front door of our room, and I hopped in the car and managed to catch it at Cameron on the downhill trek into the town of Mojave. There's my second shot of that train. And this is the photo prop that we've probably all used if we've been to Mojave, the signal bridge right outside of town with a BNSF train with lots of power heading into Mojave, where it will soon veer off by a left turn onto the BNSF, or in the early part of my photography career out here, the Santa Fe tracks that went to Barstow. And here's another one of those, you get up really early in the morning, although in February it's not that early. And this is, I call it my Kodachrome exposed on Kodachrome. SD45 making the turn out of Mojave under the full moon, heading to Barstow. So now we'll move on to Cajon Pass. This my first visit here was also my first visit to Tehachapi. Here we are in San Bernardino. This, of course, was soon after the proposed merger that never happened, where the Santa Fe was painting like crazy, consist of almost all Kodachromes, led by an FP45. I'm sorry, that's probably an F45.
Do you know if that station's still standing?
Yes, it is still standing. Metrolink, the Los Angeles commuter rail, this is their terminus. I don't know how much they use the station and what else is in there, but so this is a blue cut. Here we have the San Andreas Fault. It crosses right here at Blue Cut. There's a wide place to pull off. It was a great photography location back in the day. I've been there recently, and it seems to have been taken over by some wildlife, and a lot of illicit activity takes place in this parking lot these days. So I'm not sure I would recommend going back there. But back in 1991, it was a pretty nice place to be, to see a trio of UP SD60s taking an autorack train up Cajon Pass.
Is there a getaway road in case things start shaking?
Yes, it's all old Route 66, which is still in pretty decent shape here. So a little closer, this is actually a location called Cajon. There used to be a station here. 1986, Union Pacific heading up Cajon Pass. You'll notice it's on the left-hand track. Santa Fe had left-hand running here because the north track, the left track, had a longer route up to the summit, so it lessened the grade. And that tradition continues. Here you can see the two tracks separating. This is somewhat unusual in the fact that this westbound downhill train is on the north track, which is usually reserved for uphill trains. And here's a UP train coming down the hill with a APL stack train. Now we're at a place called Sullivan's Curve, which was named after Herb Sullivan, who was a photographer who popularized this area back in the 40s and 50s with all his photos of Santa Fe streamliners. That's a C30-7 heading uphill with an intermodal train. Up on the right here, you can see the Palmdale cutoff, and that's the Southern Pacific line that connects Palmdale with the town of Colton, which bypasses having to go into LA and up through Saugus, which is kind of a roundabout way to head north up to Tehachapi for the SP.
Jim, were there any container trains in the Tehachapis, or is the clearance restricting?
I don't think the clearance is restricted. I don't have any pictures there, but that was kind of before they did container trains. All they had were trailer trains. So here we're, and that previous picture was taken up here. Now we're on the other side of Sullivan's Curve. This is kind of the classic photo for me that I always wanted to get when I learned about the Santa Fe and fell in love with it and wanted to go photograph it. Heading up Sullivan's Curve. These access roads here are actually forest roads, and you're allowed to drive on them. Even in this day and age, there is a $5 pass you have to buy at local gas stations at the interchange with I-15. And I've had people check the pass, so if you go up there, I'd recommend doing it. But you can drive right into these areas where all these photos were taken without having to trespass, unless, of course, you want to go across the tracks. There used to be a number of grade crossings, but those are all gone. They've been. There's a UP train heading up the hill with a couple of Rio Grande tunnel motors in the consist. And here's what it looks like as of May 2012. And you can see now you've got two tracks there. I'm not sure what year, but the BNSF added a third track. So they had two tracks uphill to improve traffic flow. And you've got the Palmdale cutoff above that. And it's, I think, called canyon siding, which has been double tracked, I think, from when it was built.
How is a tunnel motor distinguished from any other diesel?
The difference is the radiator openings are down low instead of up high. And the reason it got the nickname was if you've got a train going through a tunnel with all that exhaust, the air at the top is dirty and hot. And presumably the air lower down is less foul and a little cooler. But I've heard people say, nah, that's not why it got that name. Nonetheless, that's what we rail fans have always called it. And now I'm down at ground level, and this is on the Santa Fe line. This is actually the DPU on a container train heading downhill. I didn't mention before, but if you didn't know, the UP has trackage rights on the Santa Fe through Cajon Pass from Riverside, California, up to Daggett, which is just east of Barstow, where they connect with their own line that goes up to Salt Lake City. All right, let's take a look at some Southern Pacific power. This is in July '91. This is on the Palmdale cutoff, and this is heading downhill into the LA basin. This is another train on the Palmdale cutoff, taken from one of the hills that I took those other photos of the Santa Fe trains on Sullivan's Curve. And this was that location 26 years later, in May of 2012, with a Union Pacific train. And you can see in the upper right-hand corner here, those are the Santa Fe tracks, or now BNSF, heading uphill. Now we're at a place called Mormon Rocks. The rocks are actually behind me. This is on the Palmdale cutoff. This is a westbound SP train heading up the hill. In the background, you can see the Santa Fe. This bridge here is California 138. Goes over the Santa Fe under the SP, and access roads off of that road lead into this area, where again, even nowadays, you can drive around pretty much at will to photograph. Now I'm on the other side of both of those tracks, looking back at where I photographed earlier. This is May of 2012. This is a UP train coming downhill on the Santa Fe, now BNSF line. And again, you'll notice this is on double track, which means it's a normal uphill route, but the dispatchers have the ability to fluctuate back and forth depending on the traffic with how they use these tracks. Now we're at a place called Steins Hill, which is a little further north, railroad east of Mormon Rocks, named after Richard Steinheimer, who was a very famous photographer in Southern California. And this is in 1986 when the Santa Fe was painting like crazy for the upcoming merger that never happened.
So these trains in Tehachapi and Cajon, they got 5, 6 diesel locomotives. How would that compare in horsepower to, say, steam days when they had to get up with the pushers and all that? Or do you have any idea?
I mean, these locomotives are 2,500 to 3,000 horsepower, maybe a little more back. In the early photographs I have now, up to 4,400. What's a big steam engine? 8,000 maybe. So, you know, 2 ES44 C4s is going to be equal to 1 Santa Fe 484 approximately. That would be my guess. Anybody can chime in who knows more about steam than I do.
So that's a good case for bringing back steam, right?
Yeah, you just have to hire 125 people to service each one of them between runs. That's what,
Hey, there you go.
it's not horsepower that made the difference. It's the maintenance that was required. Okay, so now we're going to go on the other side of I-15, and we're at the Alray tunnels. There were 2 of them on the Santa Fe. This is Alray Tunnel number 1. This is an eastbound coming out of the tunnel with a nice B40 CW on the point. That was in 91. Now we go back a few years earlier in June of 86. This is the other side of tunnel number 2, and this is a helper set shoving a train. You see the caboose there through Alray tunnel number 2. There was very little open space between those 2 tunnels. When BNSF decided to double track this stretch of track, they decided to daylight the tunnels. So here we are. That previous picture was taken just to the left of where I'm standing now. You can see, this is where tunnel 2 was, and this is where tunnel 1 was, and that's a little bit of an opening there. And that's the Palmdale cutoff off to your left. If you're so inclined, and I was, you can climb up to the top of that area and look down on the daylighted tunnels and see the Palmdale cutoff. The 2 is track 1 and 2 on the BNSF. That train is heading downhill.
How many sticks of dynamite does it take to daylight a tunnel?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea. All right, and this kind of reminds me of the rat hole, looking down on the trains in this elevation. All right, Hill 582. If you ever go out to Cajon Pass, you have got to visit Hill 582. It's privately built and maintained. It's on National Park Service land, but they have permission to be there. It's a little more than a half mile off the main highway. You better have a high ground clearance vehicle. It might not need to be 4-wheel drive, but you need some clearance. It's a little hill between the Santa Fe 1 and 2 mains, that are the uphill mains, and the number 3 main. But right on the other side of the Santa Fe tracks, now BNSF, are the Palmdale cutoff. So everything that goes through Cajon is with easy walking distance, or you can bring it in with a telephoto lens. They got a little bit of shade. They got park benches. It's kind of manicured. They have a little bit of a museum, if you will, of some artifacts. But it's a wonderful place to hang out and photograph trains without having to run around. So I'll show you a few photos from that area. So this is Santa Fe or BNSF track 3, which is a downhill track. You can see the train winding all the way up here, and the summit of Cajon is right up there. A little later in the day, that's the kind of view you can get from this area. If you go a little to the north there, this is the Palmdale cutoff. This is a now UP, and this is obviously a ballast train on the Palmdale cutoff heading downhill. And there's another photo. This is a Bear Table train, another ST9043, again heading west downhill. Head a little further east on the pass, and again using those Forest Service roads. This is a place called Silverwood. Here you can see back in the day there were 2 tracks on the Santa Fe. This is where they joined to go through the cut at Summit. A little further up the hill, or actually probably a little further down the hill, backtracking a little bit. Here I'm on a little bit of a bluff, taking a picture of an eastbound train climbing up the pass on the Santa Fe North track. And there are 3 helpers on the rear, shoving hard on the caboose. Now we're at Summit with the cut. This is in February 2000. At this point, there were still just 2 tracks here. I put this in because it has at least some war bonnet power in it, but you can see it's post-merger. And we've got a number of the paint schemes. We have the original BN and Santa Fe, and then we got the BNSF war bonnet, and then a Heritage 1 unit trailing. May of 2012, I was out there to chase 3751 from LA to the Grand Canyon. And this is a photograph from that trip. And you can see now we have 3 tracks through Summit. Those previous pictures were taken somewhere up here. Now we're down at a grade crossing. This is an eastbound Santa Fe train. Again, you'll notice almost all the trains from this era, they're all trailers on flat cars. You don't see much in the way of containers, and certainly no double stacks when I first started photographing out here. Now this is looking the other way at Summit. Here's tenant UP sitting on the south track, which is normally downhill. They wanted to get Santa Fe train around it. And here, this is actually, looks like it has at least 1 set of well cars right behind the power on the Santa Fe that's running around it. Another shot from the same area. I think this might be the train we saw down at Blue Cut with 3 UP SD60s, first and third M's, middle one straight. With the auto rack train, you can see the set out track right there. You cross the Santa Fe tracks, you would come up to the Palmdale cutoff, and at the Summit, SB referred to it as Highland. This is an eastbound, it looks like a rail train or a work train behind it. Looking the other way, there's a tunnel motor. Charlie, here you see, there's a radiator openings here. Presumably to let cooler air in.
No gas masks needed, right?
I wouldn't say that because it's still spewing all that exhaust out. This is Martinez on the BNSF. And I'm guessing that this is in an inspection area for trains before they go downhill. You see these platforms, you see all the lights. There was a Santa Fe or BNSF runaway at some point. There was some question of whether the brake line was severed. So this would be a way for them to stop trains and inspect them before they go down the hill. You can see we have some snow in the San Gabriel Mountains in the background. This is at Lugo. Here we have a GP60M that's been relettered with the BNS logo on the point. This is Hesperia. This is on my first trip out there in 1986 on a westbound freight. You can see the local in the siding tucked away under the bridge. Now we're going to go to Frost. This is where they have a crossover so that left-hand running can be converted to right-hand running. Now that they've dealt with the grade, this is obviously Amtrak's Southwest Chief, train number 3. with the Pepsi cans on the point. Same location, and this early transition to BNSF where you could still see war bonnets on the point. And now we are seeing double stacked. No, I didn't paint one of those. Except for that one you saw, my Santa Fe Power is pretty pristine, especially the war bonnet. So here we are. The pumpkins have taken over. This area itself has undergone some change because probably just out of view in the foreground, recently a big 4-lane divided highway was spread out across these tracks to connect with the residential area off to the right that's just booming. So I looked on Google Earth, and it looks like the area where I photographed down to the tracks here, and most of this back here is still open, but I'm not sure how that highway would impact this view. So now we're down on the ground. Here you can see, whoops, sorry about that. Here you can see the underpass where the the eastbound track ducks under here. This was in February of '88 with a westbound intermodal. And this is on the other side, down ground level. This is local with, again, 6 GP35s, and I think there's a Jordan flanger in here. Not real easy to see in this view. It's a little further east, geographically north. This is the upper Mojave Narrows. The railroad and the Mojave River, which is dry most of the time, cuts through this ridge to flow downhill to where, I'm not sure, because there's not a lot of water around here. All right. Part 3, and the last part is the Mojave Desert. This is a photo taken at West Daggett, which is right outside of Barstow. So this is one of my favorite photographic locations. I was first out in the Mojave long before I was a rail fan in 1966. In 1967, I drove from Needles to Los Angeles to the Mojave Desert at night because it was cool. And all I could see were searchlight signals and a few headlights. I was not really a rail fan, though I had a model railroad. But after my first visit rail fanning in the Mojave Desert, I fell in love with it. Of course, then it had war bonnets and the blue and yellow Santa Fe. And now everything is all wide nose GEs and they all look the same. So what brings me back all these years again and again? Well, a couple things. One, the light is really dramatic, especially at sunrise and sunset, because you usually have light till the very moment the sun ducks behind the horizon, which might be mountains. Occasionally it's clouds. So that's one reason. The second is a sense of space and distance. You can really give your telephoto lens a workout. Here's an example. Here we have this westbound stack train in Newberry, and the nose is well lit. You have sort of stormlight in the background. Those mountains are 26 miles away.
Yeah, what focal length telephoto did you use, Jim?
I have a 100 to 400, and this is probably all the way out to 400. And you could probably use an even longer one. The problem you got to watch out for is the longer you get, the more heat distortion you get, because it does get hot out here. When I go to the desert, I'm usually going anywhere from the end of January to the beginning or middle of March, because that way the weather is usually pretty nice, maybe 70, 80. I was out there once in May and it was 106 in Katie's. That's not fun. The other reason is the weather can be really interesting. And here's a UP stack train coming out of Barstow into Daggett with this approaching storm front behind it. And again, something dramatic where it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference how that locomotive is painted. So let's start in Barstow, which is the west end of the Needles subdivision. This is an Amtrak B32-8W leading a train that no longer runs, the Desert Wind. Ran from 79 to 97. Behind it is the Casa del Desierto, which is one of the Harvey houses that the Santa Fe built. It was in 1911. It's currently an Amtrak station in a museum, and you can see here it has suffered some earthquake damage. Not uncommon in this area. So here we are at Daggett. This is where the UP line from Salt Lake joins. You can see the grade crossing sign here for the UP. This was a nice location photograph. Had Santa Fe searchlights, Santa Fe cantilever. UP came in and out here. This train, you notice, has a Santa Fe that's a GP50 on the point, and everything else is BN power. This is one of those trains that was referred to as, well, it went to what's called the Avard connection, which is near Waynoka, Oklahoma, where the Santa Fe interchanged or connected with the old Frisco. And they had an arrangement that they would run trains to Memphis or Birmingham, swapping with the BN. And they often had a lot of BN power, so you could see that on the Santa Fe trains in this area.
What's that C on that hillside in the background? Do you know what that means?
Have no idea. And here's another westbound at Daggett, and it's here in my show because it shows a good example of the Santa Fe cantilever signals, which were nice to have as a prop. And again, we have some more BN power in this train, and you look at the container, BN America. So this might be also one of those Avard connection trains. So here's where the UP comes in. This is a westbound coal train. And I'm not sure where this originated. Not too far from Daggett is Yermo, which was a yard where the UP could do any switching before they went on to Santa Fe tracks. It also had a deadline at this time in '86 with Centennial units and a whole string of GP30s. It's the only Centennial that I ever photographed on UP tracks. I've seen them in some museums, but alas, I never got one on the road.
This is 86, is it?
That's 86.
That water tank's still standing. Wow.
Sure. Takes money to tear it down.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. So this is a westbound UP train coming out of Afton Canyon, which was not too far away from Daggett and within reach if you were rail fanning that area. So now we'll follow the Santa Fe or the BNSF, depending on the year, towards Needles. This is at Pisgah. Again, 88. You see most of the lading is trailers on flat cars, no containers, with an SD40-2 in the ill-fated Kodachrome scheme. All right, Ludlow, California. This is about an hour out of Barstow. And when I first went to the desert, I mean, you'd stay in Barstow or Needles, and you'd get up early and you'd go out and you'd take pictures and you'd follow the tracks and take pictures of trains. By the time you got out in the middle of the desert, the sun was up and it was great for photographs, but you missed a little of the magic of the golden hour on the front and the end of the day. So we've developed this strategy where leave Barstow at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and you get to Ludlow about an hour out at 6. The Ludlow Cafe, according to my brother, and has fairly decent coffee, and you can get on old Route 66, and you're out in the desert at dawn. So let's take
that's worth some money there. That shot, Jim.
Thank you. Okay, so this is Ludlow. It at one point was the home of 3 railroads. the Santa Fe, the Tonopah and Tidewater, which hauled borax from Death Valley, and the Ludlow and Southern, which hauled ore from Baghdad. They were both gone by 1940. So just to the west of the town are these hills, the sand hills. So here we are on one of the easternmost ones. In 2000, the merger is 5 years old, but we still got some more bonnets on the point of this train with this S-curve and the Bristol Mountains in the background. Now it's 2017, the pumpkins again have taken over, but still, I think a very nice location and a pleasant photograph, especially under this light. You turn about 90 degrees to the left, you can see the main line with the I-40 in the background. And there's another hill over there, so maybe we should climb that, which in February of 2020 we did, and this is before dawn. And I just love those pastel colors out to the east as the Barstow to Tulsa priority manifest, maybe slightly overpowered, comes into view.
Must have been almost balmy in February, right?
Well, we were wearing jackets. We were wearing jackets that day, at least first thing in the morning, because the desert can get very cold at night. So the sun has now popped over the hills behind us, and we're on the highest one. And here's another eastbound. This is a San Bernardino to Corwith intermodal train. I post a lot of my pictures on Flickr, and one of the folks who follows me works for BNSF or has contact with them, and he's kind enough to always put the symbols, if he knows them, on the pictures that I post on Flickr. That's why I know where these trains are heading to. So one of the rules about photography that I try to pay attention to is don't forget to turn the other way. And this is what can happen sometimes as this train starts to work its way up Hash Hill, racing the competition, the semi-trailers on I-40 in the background.
Long about August or July, I would think they might have some trouble with the rails overheating, or do you know out there?
I wouldn't know. I don't go there then.
Okay.
All right. Now on another day, we're down on the ground in Ludlow and hoping as sky starts to light up to the east that we'll get some trains. And here we are with a train coming down Ash Hill into town. And then we moved on to the Route 66 grade crossing. And here's another westbound. And I like the way the exhaust and the distortion blur the hill in the background. So let's get in the DeLorean and go up to Ash Hill and turn the clock back. This is January of 1988 when two Santa Fe trains are passing. This is at the summit with a fair smattering of Kodachromes and blue and yellow and trailers on flat cars. A little bit east of Summit, this is the east end of the siding for setouts, where there's a little bit of a cut. And here's an SD40-2 heading west again with trailers on flat cars. Now this, to me, is an interesting picture, and maybe you'll think so as well. Between Klondike and Siberia, which is about 5 miles behind me, the tracks are separated because the track on the right, the north track, takes a very twisty route up to the summit to try and lessen the grade. So this train is a westbound on that track. On the left is the downhill track. And I think what we're looking at is the original line that was built through the desert by the Southern Pacific before they sold the railroad, or actually swapped it to the Atlantic and Pacific, which was the forerunner of the Santa Fe in this area. So if that's the case, And Bill knows a guy named Bob Finan. I queried Bob, and and he said he's a Santa Fe expert, and he says that was built at least before 1923, and maybe it is as old as 1880. But the desert allows things to last a long time, as long as they're dead to begin with. Okay, so. You can follow the back roads if you want to call them roads. I think, Bill, you were on this trip. We're at Klondike. Somebody had a sense of humor naming these stations, Klondike, Siberia, Baghdad, just before a sunset with a full moon. And here's another westbound going by the Klondike sign. Down on the main road, which is old Route 66, in case you don't know where you are, they've painted some signs on the pavement. And here the road and the highway. This is the downhill track to Siberia, eastbound, parallel each other.
Did you rent a classic 55, 56, 57 Chevy for that trip?
No, it was probably a late model Ford Explorer with knobby tires and all-wheel drive.
Oh, no.
Well, you'll see. Hold on. So this is westbound at Siberia. This is where the tracks diverge, and he's making a hard right turn to head up the hill. And here is the town of Siberia, if you will, with that same train a couple of minutes earlier. At one point, well, for a while, I don't know how long it was when it was first planted, but there used to be a solitary palm tree at Siberia, which is gone now because I've been there and it's not there anymore. That and the war bonnet have disappeared. Okay, here's one of those mornings where again we probably left Barstow at about 4:30 this morning to get to Siberia just as the sun was coming up, and there's a westbound going under the new cantilever signal bridge on the southern Transcon. We're going to follow that north track that curves around. You have a grade crossing where we were on the last photo, a gravel road to another grade crossing, and then you're basically on your own going cross country. Here we have a rainbow in the background of this train heading north, on the north track, heading west up to the Big Horseshoe Curve. And this is where we were headed. We're a couple of miles from Route 66. You can see the headlight of a train that's just coming up the hill. You can see our rental car off to the left. And this is another one of my favorite places to be at sunrise. You can see the trains and hear them for about 10 minutes before they arrive. Then they start to curve up the hill towards you. You can see in the background here, this is the track that heads east. And Route 66 is right behind that. And these mountains there are the Bullion Mountains. And if you're there at the right time, you can see, I think it's the Marine Corps. They use that for an artillery and air attack target range. I've seen rockets and flares and all sorts of pyrotechnics going off in the background on some of these trips. Here we are in 2000 after the merger, but still a little red and silver on the point of this train. And this is, again, after the Pumpkins took over. This is in May of 2012. You can see a train heading downhill in the background on the right. And then every once in a while, a CSX unit will show up, along with a City Rail and a Heritage 2. So every once in a while, they mix it up for you. Now we're back to 1988 along Route 66 again. This is between Siberia and Baghdad. This is the train we saw at the summit of Ash Hill a few slides ago. Looking the other way towards Baghdad, coming up a slight grade, we have a Heritage 1 in the point, and an auto-rack train heading away. One of my favorites from the desert here. Nice ass curve, great sun, heat distortion. When I took this photograph, we were escorting a couple of Brits through the desert who we met at Ely for the Nevada Northern Photographers Weekend, who had never been to this area, and that made it interesting as well. You're right along the railroad, so you can do some pacing shots if you're so inclined. This is Roy's, where the road comes up from Palm Springs to meet old Route 66. It was built in 1938. The business dried up almost instantly when the interstate was built on the other side of those mountains. It remained in business just barely. Bill, I think you and I went there in 93, and I got myself a milkshake in a metal cup right off of the agitator. And they're actually opening, I'm told, those cabins for overnight guests. This is what Route 66 looks like these days. If you go down the hill and take a right, you'll end up in the town of Cadiz. Every once in a while, you see a few signs left over from the heyday of the Mother Road. So here we are in Cadiz. This is the bottom of the grade. This is where the Santa Fe connected with their branch to Parker, which is now the Arizona and California. And they interchange here usually 5 days a week in the afternoon. And I've been fortunate enough to catch them coming in. This was before they were taken over by Genesee and Wyoming, and their paint scheme was much more interesting. That GP40M on the point is a former B&O GP38. One time when I was out here with my brother, instead of going back to Route 66 and following it out towards Essex, we decided to take the BNSF access road and follow it. And we did it without any real problem, having the right kind of vehicle. This is the town of Danby, which is marked by nothing more than that station sign, a couple of buildings that have fallen down. And for some reason, this BN train or locomotive maybe just cut off because there was a problem with it to be retrieved later. Now we're at the National Trails Highway Overpass, which was a continuation of Route 66 into Needles. This was a train that we'd seen at Kleinfelter and chased all the way to Essex because of the light and the motive power. What was interesting about this train that we didn't know until we turned around, so always turn around, is it had the business car fleet on the rear end. That's the William Barstow Strong, which was the Santa Fe's theater car. I don't know if it's still in use by BNSF. Here we are at Goss. This is the summit of another hill. This was the day after a very torrential rain. The desert soil is really hard packed, and the rain usually doesn't soak in very well. Highway 66 east of Cadiz has been washed out in 5 locations, and it's been a couple of years since that happened, and they're still trying to get enough money in San Bernardino County to repair the highway. So you don't want to be out there when it rains. And if you are, be very careful where you're going. This was back in 2000, obviously after the merger. We've got a couple of BN Sharks leading a westbound at Goffs. This is the summit of Goffs Hill, right near that grade crossing. Another interesting contest in 1988, another westbound. This is at Homer. with Santa Fe Kodachrome on the point. The Santa Fe named their sightings in alphabetical order from Amboy, Bolo, Cadiz, Danby, Essex, Finnegoffs, Homer, Ibis, Java. And here we are at Ibis. Here's another section that's coming out of the Arizona-California border in the Colorado River. They're coming uphill. So the westbound route is more circuitous to lessen the grade. This is one of their GP60Ms. It was fairly new at that point. Another photograph, more recent times. Westbound on the north track with the dead mountains in the background, approaching Arrowhead Junction, where US 95 breaks off Old 66 to go to Las Vegas. Same location, very low light, beautiful scene. And again, another one of those turn around, let's see what we can find. And things were aligned so that the exhaust of the locomotives were illuminated by the setting sun heading west. This is at Java. We're pretty much broadside to the sun at this point, so I decided to do a panning shot. And this is one out of 20 that actually worked well, so I thought I'd put it in the show. Here we are at Needles. This is the old El Garces Harvey House. It was built in 1908, closed in 1949. The Santa Fe used it for office space until 1988. It's been rehabbed, Amtrak's using it, and they're trying to turn this into a business park without much success, I'm told. 2002, this is what the yard at Needle looked like, with some power laying over for whatever reason. You head east from Needles. Oops, one more here at Needles. Here we are in October 90, and the train stops, and the engineer insisted I take his photograph in front of his train. He didn't give me his address to send him a photocopy of it, but I got a picture of him, which is kind of interesting. Park Mojave is between Needles and the Colorado River, and it's a rather arid, moon-like looking scenery. Hot as the devil. Even in February, it can be pretty warm. This is a eastbound train heading to the bridge. There are some roads down into this area, so we've explored a couple of times. This was in 2017. Thought these wildflowers were interesting. I've never seen anything like that in this area. I put this one on Flickr, and somebody said, "Oh, those Danneman flowers are in bloom." Tom Danneman planted some flowers in the Mojave Desert. I don't know.
Where's the water coming from?
The sky. Where else? The cactus managed to survive well, so you can work them into a photograph. And here's the Colorado Bridge, the Colorado River Bridge, which is the border between Arizona and California. And this is a westbound heading over the bridge in 1988.
Got another water tank in there.
Pardon?
You got another water tank in there. Great.
Yeah, okay. So here's a bridge from the Arizona side in 2000, but still look at that. All Santa Fe power on this DAC train. And so that's it. Thank you very much.
Very good.
All righty. Any questions, Charlie, that you haven't asked?
Oh, okay. No. I think I got them all.
You got them all? Okay, good. I'm glad I had the answers.
Great photos, Jim.
Yeah, great program, Jim. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.